So today's topic is Java SE 5. We are going to focus on language features. So these are Java SE 5 design themes: quality, stability, and compatibility. So these are the tenet of Java technology. So Java SE 5 is not an exception on this. Pretty much everyone is now running their Java applications on Java SE 5. Second theme is it actually supports a wide range of application styles, starting from applications running on the top of desktop all the way to enterprise applications in data center environment. And it has emphasis on scalability, and it adds brand new features while maintaining portability and compatibility. And one of the most important aspects of Java SE 5 is ease of development, especially with the introduction of annotation. So it let the developers to build their applications faster, cheaper, and more reliable. In this presentation, we are going to mostly focus on so let's talk about the language change history. So Java SE 5 JDK 5 in fact has the biggest changes to language since release 1.0. So Java did not really have any language changes until Java SE 5. So these are the major new language features. Generics and annotation, those are two biggies. So we are going to cover these two topics in another presentation. These two topics are going to be covered in Advanced Java Programming course. So we are going to mostly focus on these language features of auto-boxing, unboxing, enhanced for loop, and type-safe enumerations, variable arguments, and static import. So these are the 5 language features that we are going to focus on in this presentation. So let's talk about auto-boxing and unboxing. So the problem of pre-Java SE 5, meaning JDK 1.4 and below, you have to convert primitive type to wrapper type and vice versa whenever there is a type, whenever you need to use either primitive type or wrapper type. One good example is when you are adding an item to a collection object, that item type cannot be primitive type, meaning you have to convert it into wrapper type. So this is an example. Suppose you have int of 22. Now you have linked list object, which is a collection object. Now you're trying to add this int 22 into a collection as an item. Here you had to convert into wrapper type by using new integer. Otherwise, you are going to experience compile error. In Java SE 5, this auto-boxing will be performed by the compiler. So in JDK 1.4 and below, it was your responsibility to perform the conversion. However, in JDK 5 and Java SE 5, it is the responsibility of the compiler, meaning you as a developer do not have to do this conversion. Make your life a lot easier. So you can just assign, in this case, 22 int primitive type into byte wrapper type, and the conversion will automatically perform by the compiler, meaning compiler will generate the code for performing this conversion. And the other direction is called unboxing. So suppose I have a wrapper object here, and now if you are trying to if I try to assign it into primitive type, in this case it will be performed. The conversion from the wrapper type to primitive type will be performed. Again, the code will be generated by the compiler. So now when you are trying to add int type into primitive type 22 to array list collection object of the type of integer, this is generics. Now you can just specify this number here, and auto-boxing code will be generated by the compiler for you. Okay, so that's auto-boxing and unboxing. Now let's move on to enhanced for loop syntax. So before Java SE 5, the code that you have to write in order to perform some iteration is either using iterator class or you have to use some cumbersome for loop syntax. So in JavaScript 5, things are simplified. The syntax is simplified. Basically, you're going to use this syntax. You use for, and then you provide either collection or array object, and then you can specify the type. The type could be in general object, or if you're using generics, it could be more specific type, and then the name of the variable. So let's see example of that. So this is the old code. This is a pre-JavaScript 5 code. So in this case, we are using iterator. So iterator is okay, but it's somewhat cumbersome to use. You have to get the iterator object from the collection object first. Then you have to use has next and next. So it's very cumbersome to use this iterator class. So in JavaScript 5, things are simplified. Suppose you get a collection object of the type of timer test type, and then basically you can use this syntax. So you're going to have a colon in between, and you specified your collection object, and then you can specify the type and the name of the variable. If you don't have this generic type, then you are going to use this one as an object, and you probably have to cast it. Okay, so moving forward, next, type safe enumeration. So in pre-JavaScript 5, you typically define a bunch of integer constants, and then you're going to follow one of those various type-safe enum patterns. So typically, you are going to define these integer constants like this. For example, you come up with the name, like a season winter, season summer. So you come up with your naming scheme, starting with the season, and then you assign a particular number, 0, 1, and things like that. The problem of this approach is it's not type-safe. Meaning, at the compile time, any integer will pass. So, whenever you are using this season winter, you can actually provide value 5. And the compiler doesn't know whether that's in fact type safe or not. So compiler will succeed, but during runtime, you will have a runtime exception. So it's not type safe, first of all. And you have to come up with your namespace. Here, I am using season underscore as my namespace. So you have to deal with your namespace yourself, which is cumbersome. And it is brittle. For example, if I want to add another value in between, suppose I want to define season underscore spring or fall between summer and winter, then how can I define a number? I'm going to maybe define the number another like a 3, which is not really actually the logical. And last problem is when you print out this value like a season underscore winter, it will just print out int value. So during the debugging time or logging doesn't give you any specific information about this. It's basically treated as an integer. So these are the problems of the pre-JavaScript 5 in terms of enumeration. So JavaScript 5, an enum type has been introduced. So basically, you are going to have a self-typed members for each enum constants. In fact, enum is a new keyword. So one of the problems that you have to actually be watchful is in JavaScript 5 and above, you cannot use enum as your variable number or identifier. So your code needs to be modified. So that is the downside of it. But enum itself is keyword defining the enum type. So this is an example where we are using enum. So public enum and football score, and then you defined these types. Touchdown is 6, field goal is 3, and things like that. And now, because this football score is genuine type, if you're trying to use other numbers here, for example, you define an array of football score. So in fact, this is array of football score enum type, and this is the name of the variable. And then you can specify the actual values of member values. Now, if you try to add, let's say here, number 5 as one of the members, that is going to be detected as a compiler error. So compiler will detect type mismatch. Okay, moving forward. Variable number of arguments, or var args. So in JPassion 5, you do not really have a way of passing variable number of arguments. So one workaround is actually creating an array, and then you are going to pass an array object. So in fact, example is like a java.text and message format. So here you are passing number of messages. In pre-JPassion 5, it is actually designed in a way that is receiving array object. Now in JPassion 5, you can have variable number of arguments for your method. So syntax is like this. So this code, message format method, is redefined as this way. So whenever you have object ... syntax, that means you can have variable number of arguments. And Java now supports, from the JPassion 5, printf. So in printf, you want to pass variable number of arguments, right? So if you take a look at, in fact, the printf source code, you will actually see object ... So these are the examples of Java code. They are redesigned so that they can receive variable number of arguments. So again, printf is a newly added method, and these are old methods that have been redesigned to be able to handle variable number of arguments, meaning they have object ... notation. So this is the source code of printf. In fact, if you take a look at the printf source code, you can see object ... So that means this particular method, printf method, can receive variable number of arguments. Okay, so moving forward. Static import. In pre-JPassion 5, there was no way that you can import the static reference. So you have to provide fully qualified pass to the static element. In JPassion 5, you can actually import the static type like this. And this works for static methods and enums as well. So, if you import the math, the static the class, and basically you can use syntax instead of fully qualified syntax like this. It's minor improvement. Formatted I/O. So as I said before, printf was introduced from JPassion 5, so you can use printf statement just like you use it in C and C++ programming language. Scanner class is also introduced. So it's basically a very simple text scanner which can parse primitive types and strings using regular expressions. So you can specify the regular expression as a delimiter. So it will create a set of tokens. It will break the input into tokens using delimiter pattern. So you can specify delimiter pattern. We'll actually take a look at this one in a bit more detail when we take a look at the example code. And the delimiter by default is white spaces. However, you can specify your own delimiter pattern using regular expression. Okay? And then resulting tokens then be converted into values of different types using various next methods. So you can say so in this case, I'm reading input, and then I'm just reading it as an int variable, okay, int type. Alright, so we're going to spend maybe a few minutes talking about some of the improvements made in virtual machine. So it has nothing to do with the language features, but still nice to know. So it has improved startup time, especially for small applications, up to 30% faster. So it has also reduced footprint, and it does also have what is called the shared archive. So the J2SE libraries will be in fact shared among multiple JVMs running on the same platform. So you can actually specify as a default, it will share the shared archive, but you can turn it off and turn it on. So if you want to see the syntax of it, you can say Java minus large X, and then you can see share off is do not attempt to use shared class data, and auto is shared class data if possible, that's a default, and on is required, meaning you're actually forcing it to use the shared data. Server class machine will be auto detected. So in Java, you can run your JVM either in the client mode and server mode. So server class machines are automatically detected based on these guidelines: 2 CPU and over, and 2 gigabytes of memory, except Windows. Okay, and the reason they have a different configuration between client and server is because the way they are running is, in fact, I mean, the typical usage of the server application, once they got started and then they are running for a long time. So in that case, startup time is less important, but the runtime performance is important. However, if you are running in the client side JVM, then is typically used in the desktop environment. So user interaction and response time is important. Even startup time is important. So they actually use a little bit of different configuration internally, depending on whether JVM is running either in the client mode or server mode. So again, for server-side machine will be auto-detected based on this criteria: 2 CPU and above, and 2 megabytes of memory and up. Okay. So it uses a server compiler, and it also uses a parallel garbage collector, and these are initial heap and max heap size configuration. JVM also actually do self-tuning from JPassion 5. We call it JVM ergonomics. So for example, you can specify maximum pause time goal by using max GC garbage collection pause millisecond in terms of millisecond. By the way, this is a hint, it's not a guarantee, and garbage collector running on the JVM will adjust different parameters to meet this hint, meaning meet this the specification from the user when things are possible. Okay. In terms of throughput goal, you can specify GC time ratio with a number, and basically what you're saying is that the time that you want the JVM to spend on garbage collection should be this ratio. So if you specify 1000, and then it's going to be 1 over 1001. So if you say 19, that means it's going to be 1 over 20, meaning you want the JVM do not want to use its time more than 5% in terms of garbage collection. Performance improvement. So you can actually see you can compare the performance improvement between previous version and JPassion 5. So you can see significant performance improvement has been made in JPassion 5. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. So let's go to the hands-on lab. So exercise 1 to 5 are basically going through these the language enhancement features starting from autoboxing, and I just added the new exercise scanner class. Okay, so let's go over the autoboxing. So you can just open the project. Projects are provided as Java NetBeans projects, so you should be able to just open it and run it instead of creating from scratch. So let's take a look at the code here. Yeah, so the way that things are presented in this hands-on lab is we are going to take a look at an example where the feature is not used. Okay, so here we are not using autoboxing, and then we are going to modify the code to use the feature introduced in JPassion 5. Okay. Okay, so this is a case that we have to convert between wrapper type and primitive type. Okay. So this is, we create integer wrapper type object from primitive 22, and then we are converting it back. Okay. So since we are using JavaScript 5 for all these applications, it might not make big difference, but if you're using, for example, you cannot actually do this kind of coding in JavaScript 1.4, meaning the JDK 1.4, okay? So, okay, so this is the case that we are just assigning int primitive type to the integer wrapper type object. So here auto-boxing happens automatically, meaning compiler will provide the conversion code. Okay. Again, pretty straightforward here. Enhance for loop. So this is a case that we are using iterator class. And here we are using, so this is the, we are using traditional for loop, again, which is pretty cumbersome. And then the example code here is we are going to use the enhanced new for loop syntax here. So again, we have array list collection object, and we add 4 items to the collection, and then we are looping using this new syntax for. In this case, because we don't know what type it is, we are going to use it as object type. And basically the syntax is very simple. You specify the name of the collection object variable, and then you can get each item on this type, and then you can use this O, the variable O, in your code here. So in this case, we are just displaying it. Static imports. So here, this is the case that you have to provide a full path. Okay. So this is the static int, and here you have to specify the full path in JDK 1.4. And in JDK 1.5, you can import, and you can just specify all well, basically, it's actually importing the static the references. So now you can use these references without specifying full path. Again, pretty straightforward. This is a variable number of arguments. So this is a case that we are using message format. So here, so this is an example. We were using array object to specify different number of arguments. So this has been the only way in JDK 1.4 and below to be able to send the multiple arguments. Okay. Now in JavaScript 5, you can just pass the different number of arguments without creating array object. Okay, so here format method will take a string, the parameter, and then you can pass any number of arguments. So in this case, we are passing 4, because if you take a look at, in fact, format, you will see it is defined with object ... notation, meaning it can handle a variable number of arguments. And here, this is a printf statement. So here, this is a case we are just passing 1 argument. Here we are passing 2 arguments, here and here. Okay, and so again, printf. Again, if you take a look at the printf statement, you should see the source. Java documentation and source code should have object ... notation. Okay, so this is a format method, which is this one. Okay. So let's actually just try that with the, this is variable. Here we go. Okay, so if you take a look at the source code, so let's take a look at the source code. Go to source, and you can see this format method has object ... notation. And printf statement should have the same thing. So again, let's take a look at the source code or Java documentation, and you can see it has object ... notation, meaning printf statement can handle variable number of arguments. Okay. All right. Exercise 5 is type-safe enumerations. So here again, this is the code of pre-JavaScript 5. You had to define your constant value using integer values like this. Okay. So this is a quiz. What are the problems of this approach? Anybody still remember? Yeah, this is a quiz. So what are the problems of this approach? Anybody? First, it's not type safe, right? And the namespace you have to define yourself, and it's brittle because you cannot really, kind of add the value in the between. And the printf statement is just printing out the integer value. It doesn't actually print out the meaningful information. So this is a code that we are basically comparing. So we have. So I'm going to just move on to the code that we are using enum type. Okay. So we have a football score, the type, which is enum type, and these are the values. Because it's a genuine class, this is the class name. Because it's a genuine class, you can have constructor method, and you can also have a variable and even the method. Okay, so these are again something that you cannot do with the previous approach, right? So here we define the football score type of array, and these are the values. Again, if you try to add like a number 6 here, or a number that are not one of these, for example, if you try to add any number, not one of this, then it will be a compile error. So you have my scores and your scores, and basically we are just comparing whose scores is actually better. And you can see you can actually invoke a method of of your football score type, because that's a class. Okay, and so let's actually run that application. Type-safe enum. Yeah, so basically, okay, so one thing I'd like to show is here I added a method. You can actually print out one of your values. So in previous JavaScript 5, pre-JavaScript 5, if you try to display the constant value, it's going to actually display integer value. In this case, it's going to display field goal. This is a lot more meaningful value, right? Okay. All right. Moving forward. Scanner. So in this case, we created scanner object from standard input device, and if the value is something that we can convert in an int, we are going to receive it as an int value, and then you can type it. And this is another example where we are using, in fact, delimiter. So the delimiter as a default is a white space, but you can specify your own delimiter using regular expression. So here, suppose I have input string like a 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, and blue fish, like this. And then we are using white spaces in between the words, right? So now we are using this guy as a delimiter. So you can specify, you can call use delimiter method when you're creating integer object, and you're saying is that I'm using this string as a delimiter pattern. This is a regular expression. So what it's saying is that the delimiter pattern is /s is any number of white spaces. /s is \s is the white spaces. Okay, because we are inside the quotation, we have a double backslash. So we have a backslash and /s. The s, that means the white space, and then if you have a star, that means any number of white spaces. And then it should have fish, and then followed by any number of the white spaces. So we are using that one as a delimiter. So meaning we are using this guy as a delimiter. This guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy as a delimiter. Okay. So now when you call next int, it will actually get the one as the next int value. Now then it's going to use delimiter, so it will just skip this part, and then when you call next int, it will take 2. And then it will use this guy as a delimiter. So next time you're going to say next, it will actually get red. And the same thing for this. So if you run this application, so scanner application, so here it's asking me to enter some values. So if I type some number string like a 23, it will convert it into 23, and then it will convert that strings fish string into this 1, 2, and red, blue. So if you again take a look at the code, so it's receiving something as int type, and then it will display it as an int, and then it's going to use this guy as input. Okay, so here instead of getting the input value from the system in, as in this case, we are getting from a string, and then we specify what is the delimiters that we are using. So delimiter we are using is the any number of white spaces, and then followed by fish, and then followed by the any number of white spaces. So this is in fact a pattern. So let's take a look at the Java documentation of the pattern, and so I want to show the pattern. Yeah, okay, I'm going to just find the pattern class. Okay, here you go. So these are regular expression patterns. So /s is this. Whenever you see \s is a white space character like this. Okay. Now when you say /s start, that means any number of white spaces. Okay, so that's the reason, here the delimiter is any number of white spaces, and then the fish. And so if you remove this guy like this, okay, what happens is, let's actually try to run this application. It will have some errors. So let's just type 12, and then it has a problem. The reason is this. So it takes number 1, and then it's using delimiter of fish, right? So next character is h. Now it's trying to receive it as int, because h cannot be converted into integer. So that's the reason it has the input mismatch exception. So suppose if you change this guy like like this, and then it will actually work better, because now the second int is in fact this too. So if you run it, then it should actually work better like this. So in this case, it's taking the first, it will take 1 as int, right? And then it will take, this is a delimiter, right? This part is the delimiter, and the next int is 2, so that's okay. Now this will take this part as a delimiter, so rest of it is like the next token is h, right? So when you call next, it will take h and red, okay, and then it's going to again take this part as the delimiter. So next token is this h blue, so that's the reason you get the h blue. And now if you have another one, because that's the last next, then you're going to actually see any. If you have another line of this, then it will display h. Okay, all right, so hopefully that I can give you a sense of how things work. Let me just get it back so that the hands-on app is in fresh mode. Okay, so that is the end of this exercise. All right, any questions?